to work deals with the airlines. Additionally, I've worked with the MDA to provide support, federal resources, to help to make these deals available to improve air service, providing additional capital equipment at the airport. But we really need to make a fundamental change, a transformational change out there.
Okay, thank you, Congressman. Mr. Maffei?
You know, Mr. Walsh keeps talking about transformational changes, and we do need an airport authority. But it's been 18 years. How come none of these things have happened? How come these transformations haven't occurred? It's all incremental. And the other thing is, he says now that he's against the president's privatization plan. But when he filled out a candidate questionnaire in 2004, he said that he checked that to allow workers to invest a portion of their payroll tax in private accounts, which they manage themselves. He also appeared with the President of the United States, President Bush, at a privatization rally in Greece, New York, with two of his Republican colleagues who do support Social Security privatization. I mean, I don't know why you think standing up to the president means standing behind the president when he's doing a privatization rally. So I do wonder about the inconsistency of that position.
All right, thank you, Mr. Maffei. Let's talk about the president's package of tax and spending cuts, 2003, their impact, and Mr. Maffei, your opinion.
Well, this is one of the main points I keep bringing up in this campaign, because Mr. Walsh keeps on talking about a particular grant here and a particular grant there, and grants are good, and all members of Congress bring back grants. I do believe now it's clear that Democrats will have a majority in Congress, and I will be well positioned to do this. But the federal cuts that we face under President Bush pale in comparison. I'm sorry, they make the grants pale in comparison with these cuts. Millions and millions and millions of dollars. It's just no comparison. One example recently we found was with the Syracuse Housing Authority. The Syracuse Housing Authority had cut its budget nearly 10 times the national average. A $2.5 million cut in 2007 on top of $2.2 million in 2006. That's an $825 cut per family for a year. In other words, in order to make that up, we'd have to raise the families who go to these housing projects $68 a month. If Congressman Walsh is so good at advocating for federal aid, how come we're getting such a dramatic cut?
That's a good question. Congressman Walsh?
Thanks, Don. Before I get to that, I'd like to just go back to Social Security. I told the president on that trip to Greece, New York, that he was beating a dead horse, that Social Security reforms were not going anywhere and he ought to refocus on something else, and he did. As far as the tax cuts are concerned, the tax cuts, we eliminated 6 million American low-income working families from paying any income taxes. That's not talked about. My opponent talks about the tax cuts for millionaires, but we saved millions of Americans from paying income taxes. We've also dramatically reduced middle-income taxes. Now, Mr. Maffei's boss, Charlie Rangel, and Mr. Maffei, if he were so fortunate to be elected, will raise our taxes. A family of 4 earning $50,000 under their plan will pay an additional $2,000 a year in income taxes, on top of us being already the highest taxed region in the country. So if you want higher taxes, vote Democrat.
Thank you, gentlemen. Let's move on to another issue with a huge impact on Central New York farmers, apple growers especially. That's immigration reform, legislation aimed at tightening control of illegal immigrants. Congressman Walsh, your view?
My view is, first of all, we need to secure our borders, north and south, and we're doing that. We passed major legislation at the end of the last session of Congress to build a wall, to provide hundreds and thousands, literally, of immigration officials and National Guardsmen. So we need to secure the border. We want people to come to this country. They always have. My ancestors did, but they need to come in legally. Mr. Maffei is opposed to a guest worker program. The only way that our farmers can get the crops in, apples, whatever the case, we had thousands of dollars of apples fall on the ground this year and go unpicked because of the immigration policies. And he would be opposed to giving people the opportunity to hire guest workers. That's very unrealistic. It just goes against everything that our farmers need right now. I don't think he's in touch. He hasn't lived in this area. He doesn't understand the needs of the farmers, and therefore he's taken a very rigid position.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Maffei?
Well, thank you, Don. I certainly understand the needs of the farmers enough to not vote to cut the milk payment rate from 45 to 34%, a thing I brought up in the last debate. Congressman Walsh said he didn't know anything about it. Well, Congressman, let me refresh your memory. That was on December 19th of last year, 2005, when you voted for that cut. The Congressman is correct, though. I don't support a permanent guest worker program. I do support a temporary transition. At least let our farmers be doing things legally. The reason why our farmers are in such bad shape is because the farm policies of this administration have jilted the small farmer. They've supported the big corporate farms, but they've jilted the small farmer. Congressman Walsh voted for the Central American Free Trade Agreement to expand trade even further and export more jobs. He says he did that for the farmers, but a lot of the farmers say, no, no, that's hurting us. The big farm lobby, though, is happy with it. I think we should focus on the family farms, and we'll do that with both a transition rule for the guest worker program, but also better farm aid.
Thank you, Mr. Maffei. I wonder if we could move from farms to the Syracuse economy as a whole and get your opinion on the state of the Syracuse economy, what needs to revitalize it, and perhaps your thought on the Destiny development.
Well, I do believe that we need to revitalize the Syracuse economy. We've lost 25% of our young people from age 25 to 34, according to the Post Standard, in the last 16 years, roughly corresponding with Mr. Walsh's tenure. That's too much, and a lot of them are leaving because there just aren't the kinds of jobs here. I mean, everybody wants to see new development. The Destiny project is good. We have to determine whether it's worth the taxpayer investment, but we're never going to be able to float an economy on retail. We need to manufacture again. That means new technologies, new energies, sources, the kind of things that they're doing with new biofuels. I think we can become the Silicon Valley for this. But it's not just going to happen, and it's not just going to happen with an appropriation here and an appropriation there. We're going to need to have zonal improvements, and we're going to need to have somebody who's really an advocate, goes around the country, meets with businesses, make sure that small businesses have access to capital, which they're not. Congressman Walsh will no doubt brag about the centers that he's built to try to incubate new businesses. Unfortunately, they're half empty.
Thank you, Mr. Maffei. Congressman Walsh?
Thank you, Don. More doom and gloom from my friend. New York State leads the nation in exporting its young people. It also leads the nation in driving business away because of high taxes. In spite of that, and that's all New York State policy, primarily driven by downstate liberal Democrats from downstate New York who've raised our taxes, increased our regulation. In spite of that, we're growing jobs at a faster rate than any other region in the country. In the state. I have invested in the incubator center downtown. I have utilized federal resources to invest in all the new technologies that are burgeoning across upstate New York: bioinformatics, infotonics, energy systems, and environmental systems here in Syracuse, nanotechnology in Albany. No one has worked harder than I have every day to reinvigorate and transform our economy. We're making the transition from analog to a digital economy, and while Mr. Maffei's been working on the Ways and Means Committee trying to raise taxes in Washington, I've been working here every day trying to grow our economy.
Thank you, Congressman. Let's move on to veterans' health care issues. You mentioned the VA hospital is one of the best in the country. More than 50,000 veterans in the district right now, with more coming home all the time. I saw some campaign literature from Mr. Maffei that said Jim Walsh and the Republican Congress have passed budgets that substantially cut funding for veterans programs below the level needed to maintain current services for the year 2008 and beyond.
It's absolute nonsense. I'm very proud of the role that I've played chairing the budget that oversees veterans funding for the last 8 years. No budget in the federal government has grown as quickly and as fully as the veterans budget. Not one. Not DOD, nothing. So at the macro level, we now have the best hospital system in the world. I also have responsibility for defense health, and we put tremendous amounts of resources into the defense health program: Bethesda, Walter Reed, Landstuhl, all of which I have visited. I suspect my opponent has never been in any of those places. And we are providing our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines with the best health care possible. Our local hospital is the best in the entire system. New equipment, new technology, new management, new professionals, and an active volunteer veteran involvement. And we're about to add a new 7-story spinal cord injury center, which will be a regional facility that everyone can benefit.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Maffei, it's your campaign that says from 2008 through 2011, the House Republican budget cuts veterans funding by billions of dollars below what's needed.
Well, it's absolutely correct. We'll have the documentation on my website, www.maffeiforcongress.com. The problem is Congressman Walsh talks about raising the overall level. So, for instance, it would go, say, from $10 to $12.